Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on every Sunday through Wednesday. Wednesday through Sunday at 8 to 10 a.m. We're here to cover all your local Northeast professional sports. We also cover the national sports, but we particularly pay attention to the New York, Boston, and Philly area. Again, on Wednesday through Sunday from 8 to 10 a.m. You can see us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. On Facebook, use username MacMan62 to bring you right to us. You can also Google us at Mac and Jack Sports. We have a great website at macandjacksports.com. The name of the website is Mac Sports Insiders. We have an Instagram page. We have a Twitter page. Like, follow, share, and subscribe where you can to help us keep growing. I'm Mac with my co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Hall of Fame Association. He's our historian. And we also have our special guest who comes on normally every Saturday, Dr. Paul Semmendinger. He's the founder of Start Spreading the News, a very popular Yankees blog. He's also an award-winning author. So how are you two doing today, gentlemen?
Doing great. Thank you.
And how you doing, Jack? Jack went quiet on us. Uh-oh, Jack. How did you go quiet on us, Jack? Can't hear you right now. Yeah, maybe the folks at home can hear you. Like I said, we were having problems coming on with the internet earlier. Yeah, can't hear you. So if you want to try to come back in, we can, or I can just tell me when you're done making your statement, Jack, and we'll go from there. Okay, all right. So he's going to come and try and come back in, Doc. Like I told you earlier before the show, I was having a little problem with the hookup, and hopefully when he comes back on, he'll be we can hear him. So Doc, while you're here, I'm going to go ahead and cover the quick sports updates before we get to the Yankees trivia and a little bit of I heard him pop in, so hopefully.
There it is.
All right. Beautiful, Jack. Yeah, it worked. It definitely worked. So, Jack, as I told the doc, we're going to go over a little the sports update before we get into the Yankees and our debates.
By the way, I like the Mets. I'm a Yankee fan, but I like the Mets. Okay,
thank you.
So I just don't want any Met fans getting offended. They're seeing the Yankee caps, the Yankee power around here. I like the Mets. Well, I don't know about Doc.
Hey, Jack, thanks for sharing.
I like the Mets also, but I'm a Yankee fan.
Jack, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, Jack, thank you for adding that and slowing me down this morning.
Okay.
Jack, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, for the sports update is sponsored by Fanatics. If you want to get the clothing of your favorite teams, jerseys, hats, all gear, we have the place for you, Fanatics. Just go to the macandjacksports.com website, Max Insider, to click on their link. It brings you right to their store just in time for Christmas, order for your special someone's birthday, or just treat yourself to your favorite team's clothing and gear. That's macandjacksports.com. The website, again, is called Max Sports Insiders. Click on the Fanatics link for all your teams and clothing gear. In fact, Jack's hat this morning is bought from Sports Fanatics. So as you see, we use their store.
That's right.
Yes, sir. So in this little bit of sports updates I'm going to do with you two, the Ravens and Steelers moved to Tuesday. They originally was scheduled for Thanksgiving Day, got moved to Sunday, and now they're moved to Tuesday because of the COVID outbreak on the Baltimore Ravens team. You have Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. fighting tonight, not for any belt, but for entertainment. I still think, Jack and Doc, if Mike Tyson gets caught with a shot, he's going to get mad, and that fight will no longer be an exhibition fight.
Well, that's the drama,
yes,
whether
sure.
It's going to turn into a complete exhibition fight or maybe get a little out of hand. That's
I definitely think something big's going to happen. Jack. The Braves signed Charles Morton to a 1-year, $15 million contract to bolster their rotation. Morton is a veteran. I think he's 37 years old. The Braves really wanted or I should say depended on their younger staff, and they added a couple more veterans to get a little depth there. The Mets' Sandy Alderson Alderson.
Alderson, yeah.
Yes, will be head of baseball ops as part of his duties. And now they will shift the interview process to look for a GM. So the Mets in the news, going ahead in there, they're kind of trying to get their front office together. COVID had a little problem. They had a little problem with COVID interviewing for, the baseball ops. So he's going to take control of that and go to GM.
In reality, Sandy Alderson is really going to be the GM and make the decisions. He's not going to get someone who's going to override him, give him a lot of difficulty. So in reality, Sandy Alderson is going to get someone, who's good at figuring out payroll, knowledgeable baseball man who could assist him, or maybe someone who he's going to be grooming for the job, because Sandy Alderson might only be willing to do it for a year or two.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jack. I think it was a big move by Cohen to get him in there to get the things going in the right direction. And, maybe the GM, like you say, maybe it's only for the following years where, like you said, Alderson will be the head GM, really calling the shots. But they do have to have a GM lined up after he leaves, too. So maybe they'll work with him for, a year or two, and then they'll go ahead and take over. So what we got for you, Yankee fans, and for my two Yankee experts, because, we got Dr. Paul Semmendinger, who runs the Yankee blog, starts spreading the news, and we got Jack, who knows as much about the Yankees as anybody I know. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a little bit of trivia here this morning for you folks. It's a Yankees trivia question, and it's pretty easy. I didn't even have to look at the answers to this, so my two experts should get this no problem at all. So, gentlemen, which player won the World Series MVP in 1978?
That's easy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, same guy who got him there in the playoff home run.
Yes,
That's
they
Bucky
did.
Dent. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We're doing teamwork. I'm passing the ball to Doc. Yankee shortstop.
Well, that's
the answer.
But
teamwork.
There are probably newer
Doc
Yankees.
knew that like that. Doc
Yeah.
got it probably a second before I did, though.
But there are probably a few newer Yankee fans that didn't know that Bucky Dent with that dramatic home run against the Red Sox. At that time, the Red Sox and the Yankees were probably, in my opinion anyway, the best two teams in the whole MLB. And whoever won those games back then, 78, and in 77, I think they would have won the World Series.
Doc Mack, there's this perception that the Red Sox choked that year. They had their 14-game lead in the summer, and the Yankees came back, and they talk about the Boston Massacre, about the Red Sox choking. What people don't realize, the Red Sox won their last 8 games to force that one-game playoff. So that's not exactly choking. They did come back and put themselves in a position, to win the division and overtake the Yankees at the very end.
Yeah, the Yankees actually lost that last day of the season. I think Catfish Hunter pitched.
Right.
Yeah. And if the Yankees had won against Cleveland, Rick Waits maybe was the pitcher for Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I think the Yankees lost something like 8-0. I don't have the game in front of me, but it was something like that. And that forced the one-game playoff up in Boston.
Yeah. I mean, those were some exciting games back then, as it was in the 2000s. But even back then, the Yankees and the Red Sox, well, they've always been going at it, guys. It's either, a lot of people say it's not a rivalry anymore, but to me, a rivalry has as much to do with history and tradition as it does the current teams.
And like you talk about the two iconic playoff games, the Yankees and Red Sox, I'm interested if you guys had to pick one over the other. Would you pick the 1978 one-game playoff when Bucky Dent, which is known for Bucky Dent's 3-run homer, or would you pick the 2003 7th game in which the Yankees came back? I'd pick the 2003 game. That's my favorite. But what about you guys?
Oh, I would have to go with the 78 game.
78.
Sometimes when you think about these things, you think about them in context as well. Mm-hmm. And so the Yankees didn't win the World Series in 2003. So Boone hits the homer, gets them there. But the ultimate ending was disappointing. But in 78, obviously, they won the World Series. So the ultimate ending was more of a happy one.
Right. 2003, is known for Grady Little leaving in Pedro Martinez too long. But just think it over. If he took out Pedro Martinez at the end of 7 innings with a 5-2 lead and Boston blew it, Grady Little would never be able to live it down. If he took out Pedro Martinez with 1 out in the 8th inning, no one on, he wouldn't be able to live it down. Then Jeter hits a double. He still wouldn't have been in a position to take Martinez out without getting criticism. So the perfect time maybe would have been when Bernie Williams got a base hit. They made it 5-3. There was a guy on first. Then you could justify it at that point. But he was just a batter or 2 off in reality, because then I remember Matsui hits the double. It's 2nd and 3rd. At that point, he absolutely should have taken Pedro out. But it's weird. You could have a great job managing a team, and if you have a little bit of a lapse over a batter or 2, or make a decision such as Kevin Cash did with Blake Snell, you might never live it down for the rest of your career.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go along with Doc and talking about the 78 game against the Red Sox. And, you know, I remember them coming back from that 14-game deficit. And Bucky Dent, of course, was not known for his power. So when he hit that ball, when it first went off his bat, I thought it was a pop-up. And I'm like, oh, my God, it's over. And, you know, and then I said, well, maybe it's going to make the wall because it stayed up there. And, of course, they have that short wall there, and maybe it's a double. But when that thing dropped into the net over the Green Monster, I went crazy. I mean, what a series! What a great rivalry that is, all the way back to Babe Ruth. I mean, I don't think there's any rivalry really in sports that can match that. As far as, you know, for the last couple centuries almost. I mean, this has been unbelievable, this rivalry, and that Bucky Dent shot to me is unbelievable.
It's ironic that it was hit off Mike Torres, who was the Yankee World Series hero the year before.
Definitely. So
I think there was a story about Mike Torres eventually saying at Old Timers Days he did not want to be introduced anymore as the guy who gave up Bucky Dent's home run.
You know, that's a shame. He should have a place in Yankee history, Mike Torres, for the 2 games he won against the Dodgers.
Including the clincher. He was on the mound. Right? He caught the pop-up to win the game.
Good point.
Yeah.
You know, again, that game actually. Yeah.
You know, Doc, we talk about some of the greatest baseball players or just sports figures in history, how they're remembered for certain things, even though he had a good to great career. I mean, you know, you could talk about Buckner was a great first baseman fielder, and that one ball that went through his legs, I mean, that's what he's remembered for. And, you know, it's the same thing with Mike Torres, a really good pitcher, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but man, he could, when in the clutch, he had some really big wins, and he's always going to be remembered, you know, for that home run from Bucky Dent.
You know, I went stock too, and Mac, how one play can change everything. Case in point, let's make believe that Paul O'Neill drops the final out on David Wells' perfect game. David Wells doesn't get the perfect game. You think Paul O'Neill would be in the broadcast booth today? He wouldn't be as popular Yankee. He'd still be popular, but he wouldn't be looked on it the same way. Whenever you'd think of Paul O'Neill, you'd think of the drop ball with the perfect game. You wouldn't think, oh, Paul O'Neill was the ultimate warrior. You know, so, yeah.
And I think that was in 96, too. He made that great catch, right, in deep right field.
Game 5. Yeah, and
if you don't make that catch, the Yankees don't win that game. 96, they probably don't win the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, just it's all a game of inches and plays at the right time, and some people make them and some people don't. And again, you know, some of the better to great players are remembered for their mess ups instead of what they achieved. So that's pretty interesting. So what we're going to do, Jack, we're going to get to the debate. And, of course, this is a Yankee debate question. And Jack straightened me out before the show exactly what this was about. So it's not really who's first at the free agency signing. It's if you only had one free agent pick, who would that be? If you could only sign one free agent. And, Jack, you go first.
Okay, we're talking for both the Yankees and the Mets. We'll both do the Yankees first, and
right.
I'll do the Yankees, and then we could talk about the Mets. The Yankees have several needs, unfortunately. They definitely need a top of the line starting pitcher. Not they have their ace in Garrett Cole, but someone who's really, really solid. I mean, they can re-sign Tanaka. I don't know how solid he is at this point. James Paxton coming off an injury. Perhaps he has a lot of upside as someone else. The catcher position, wow. What do you do with Gary Sanchez? That's a different debate on itself. It appears that the Yankees are going to hold on to him, but if he continues to slide, or last year wasn't an aberration, they could go to Kyle Higashioka. They can maybe patch things together. George Springer would give him a little flexibility in the outfield, but and of course there's Trevor Bauer. You get him and you team him up with Garrett Cole. I mean, that would give you a pretty formidable 1-2 punch, of course. But DJ LeMayo, it all comes back to him, and he is a free agent. He's not a Yankee anymore. So if all of you are thinking, well, he's a Yankee, get someone from another team, he's not a Yankee. And he's the one guy who not only gives you a great bat, and his winning the batting title was no fluke with the Yankees because he won it with Colorado as well, but he's a Golden Glove caliber fielder. I know his age. What is he, around 33, Doc? Okay.
He'll be 33 in July, yep.
Right, okay. So if you give him a 5-year deal, he's not going to forget how to field. He could give you a Gold Glove caliber glove at second the way he has, at first base if you want to move him there to get a better defensive shortstop. Let's say they could work out a trade for Lindor, hypothetically. Or if Urshela eventually leaves the Yankees, plays out his option, DJ LeMayo will give you a very good glove at third base as well. The guy could probably play the outfield if they ask him to. Who knows? Maybe a pull, like we're talking about the show of Babe Ruth. I wouldn't be shocked if he could pitch a little bit, give you an inning here and there. Most versatile player around. Great bat. Even if he slips, this guy's a born hitter. He's going to be a 280 hitter if he slips badly and still give you a good glove. But if he could keep playing on this level, which I believe he can for the next few years, how can you not sign him above anyone else? Because all the dynamos you could fit in around them, but he's the one guy above the rest that the Yankees should sign as a free agent.
Well, Jack, of course, DJ LeMayu is the most sought signing by the Yankees, especially the Yankees fan. And why not? As you just said, he's the best hitter in the league, former Gold Glove. But let's look at it from the big picture. Worth versus need, Jack. Money spent in the most important areas. We have a first baseman who's who's a home run leader, a future possible all-star second baseman. We moved to shortstop, a real good third baseman right now. We don't have a good starting rotation, a good shortstop, but most of all, we have a terrible catcher, Jack, who hits around 200 and is terrible defensively. So let me give you some names, Jack. Bill Dickey, batting average 313. Thurman Munson, batting average for his career 292. Yogi Berra, career average 285. Elson Howard, career average 274. Jorge Posada, career average 272. Wally Shang, career average 297. And guess what, Jack? All great to good fielding catchers. Now, in even by chance, or maybe a big reason, the Yankees were World Series when these guys were catchers. So if I was the GM of the Yankees, my first position I would want to fill would be catcher if I was looking for something. DJ LeMayu, you're talking 5 years, maybe $150 million. I would go after a catcher that a lot of people haven't talked about, and that's James McCann. Listen, his average was even better than Realmuto's average at 274. He had 24 home runs, Jack. McCann is not only that, but his strong caught to stealing ratio is up near the best. He will be far less expensive than LeMayu, may give the Yankees options, if there was any options, to signing different people, such as a starting pitcher or shortstop. And not only that, Jack, if you think about it, the Yankees have Cervino coming back. We don't know how he's going to be, but he is coming back. And even Germano, is it Germano? Germano, he might be coming back too. He pitched very well in the minors. He still seems to have his stuff. There's other people in the farm system that they can take a look at. But I think if the Yankees were to look at one position that they need, and they need right away, it's catcher. It's time to say goodbye to Gary Sanchez. It's time to get a real good defensive hitting catcher like we had in the past when we won our World Series, Jack.
Okay, we'll let Doc go, and then we'll respond to one another, or I'll respond to you and maybe respond to Doc, depending on what he says. Okay.
All right. So I think it's a multiple faceted question. I think as I've talked about here, if I were the Yankees, what I would want to do is move Gleyber Torres off of shortstop. So the Yankees definitely would need a shortstop. And then if Torres plays second, again, I think that's LeMahieu's best position. I like the fact that he's very versatile, but I don't like the fact that I think you're going to have to sign him for big dollars for a long time. And if he becomes a 280 hitter, I don't know if he's worth $20 million a year. So, and the Yankees have a first baseman then in Luke Voit, who's very cheap because he's he's young and he hasn't had a lot of major league playing time. As far as Sanchez, I think he is almost worn out his welcome in New York, but I think he's only going to be 28 this coming season. And he has so much talent that I'm making the argument that the Yankees ought to give him one last chance in order to try to prove who he can be. And then if he can't do it, it's Higashioka who would then be the catcher. So if I could only sign one free agent, I think the idea is that the Yankees pitching staff is extremely weak. I have Trevor Bauer's stats up here, and I think a lot of people are giving him a lot more credit than he might really be, because his overall numbers for his career aren't great. And it's always tough to hire or sign somebody off their one great year, especially if it's only a 60-game season. But he did have a 1.73 ERA. He was unworldly this year. And I think if I'm the Yankees and I could only get one guy, the place where I think it'll make the most amount of impact on the team would be to bring in that other, hopefully, second line starting pitcher who could fill in the number 2 spot, make them very strong in the playoffs. You match up Bauer and Cole against anybody, and you hope. I'm just a little reluctant because Bauer has not had a long time great career. He really has had a couple of great years interspersed with some lesser quality years in between. But I would sign Trevor Bauer.
Okay, he would be my second choice, Trevor Bauer, but I have concerns over the maturity issue. Because the reason Cleveland traded him, that was the reason. I mean, Terry Francona comes out to the mound to get the ball, and Trevor Bauer throws it into the outfield stands. I mean, come on. It's like a kid having a hissy fit. I mean,
though I think Righetti did that once a long time ago, too.
Okay, well, yeah, Righetti turned out to have a long career as a pitching coach in the game. So Trevor Bauer would be a good choice. I mean, I can't argue about that. Mac, your thing of James McCann makes a lot of sense as a secondary free agent, because chances are you're not going to have to invest the amount of money you would in Realmuto or the amount of years. You can maybe get McCann over a 3-year deal. With Realmuto, there's going to be a lot of bidding, and it might be a 6-year deal. And one thing we should learn about giving catchers a long-term contract, let's go back to the Twins and Joe Mauer. Joe Mauer was from the Minnesota area. He was a hometown hero. The Twins had to re-sign him for the PR, and he was a great player. On top of it, they signed him to an 8-year deal. His skills started to fade as a catcher. Then they had to move him to first, and it would turn out to be a bad deal. Had they just let him walk, it would have been bad for them for the first 3 years out of the 8, and then the deal would have started to make sense why they didn't sign him. So what you're both saying, I can't argue with, especially McCann. Maybe 3 years, $12 million a year. They can get him. The investment isn't quite as great, but that shows then they have to cut ties with Gary Sanchez completely.
Yes.
They get McCann. I mean, Higashioka could remain as a backup, but Sanchez has to go. And maybe the Yankees aren't ready to do that with Sanchez. I mean, maybe they really do feel he has this untapped potential. and can be the player they thought he could be. And as far as Trevor Bauer goes, I mean, how can you argue? You can't have too much pitching, and the Yankees need a lively arm. But DJ LeMayo, imagine if he's not there, though. What becomes of your team? I mean, who plays second base now? Do they move Gleyber Torres to second base and just get whoever off the wire waiver? Anyone who can play a decent defensive shortstop.
I think
So
there's
that's
enough
what-
shortstops out there that the prize is Francisco Lindor if the Yankees could pull that off. But if you don't, there's Brandon Crawford. I think there's Andrelton Simmons and DJ LeMahieu. So you're going to have a quality shortstop.
You mean
Well, they
DD?
would have to trade Francisco Lindor. The problem is you're going to have to sign him to a long-term deal at big, big money. And I don't think it's worth it what
Well-
he's going to
well,
ask.
I think Doc meant Didi Gregorius. I think that's
Oh,
what he
D.D. Gregorius. I'd love to see him come back.
out there.
We
So
absolutely
you get McCann, you get DD. So now you got a catcher. Now you got a shortstop. Torres is over in second, and I agree they need another pitcher. I do agree with that. But both of those signings are not going to be astronomical. If you pick up McCann and you pick up DD, and of course we're saying if there was only one, that's the basis of the debate. But to further that, if you're going to go ahead and make a big move when it comes to signing, I think, listen, Gary Sanchez, I love Gary Sanchez, especially when he first came up. He's regressing, guys. He's not getting better. He's not staying the same. I mean, he still has power, but what's good is 25, 30 home runs if you're batting 200 and you can't play defense. You need a good defensive catcher who can hit the ball. We need an offensive catcher for sure and has some pop in his bat. Real Muto is going to be very sought after. McCann, not so much. And I think McCann's only like 30 years old or 32 years old, right in between that time frame. He's still got 3 good years left in him at least. And that's a 3-year contract, guys. It saves the Yankees a lot of money. It opens other options for them. So I really believe that the catcher position, especially in the Yankees in their history, has shown that, listen, this is what you need to win a World Series. And I agree with, and again, I agree with both of you to a point. But it's time to say goodbye to Gary. It really is, guys.
Well, if he had that type of a year over 162 games, I might agree with you, but it was a shortened season. So he didn't really he played about 35% of the season took place. So who knows what he would have done had the season gone along. Maybe he would have snapped out of it. I'm not saying he would have. I agree with it with Gary Sanchez. He's on probation basically right now. I mean, if he gets off to a bad start the first month, they might move him during the season.
Yeah, I definitely see that coming. So Doc goes with a pitcher, Jack goes with LeMahieu, and I took McCann. So that's if we were the GM of the Yankees, those would be our moves. We probably yelled at it either way. They're relentless as far as the Yankee fans go. So we got next up, Jack. We did the same question with the Mets. Again, as Jack said, it's not exactly who would be their first free agent signing, but who would be their only free agent signing this year. And Jack, I'm going to go with another catcher. I'm going to go with Real Muto. I mean, the pitching was a problem for the Mets last year. A lot of it had to do with injury and the COVID withdrawal of one of their pitchers. They had a great hitting team, but not in the clutch with runners on scoring position. The weakest part of the Mets was also a catcher. So you have Wilson Ramos, he's a free agent this year. He batted .239 with 5 home runs. Real Muto is arguably the best all-around catcher over the past several years. Again, he batted .272. He's a premier defenseman. He's fast on the base. He runs the bases great, one of the fastest catchers in the league. Barber would be a great addition, but since Ramos is a free agent this year, it would only make sense and be obvious that they get Real Muto. So I think their bats are good. Position players are good. They got to hit in the clutch better. And the pitching is solid. So to me, Real Muto would be the best option for the Mets.
I mean, I can't argue. That's the direction I think they're going to go in. I think Steve Cohen wants to make a big splash. If this were the Wilpons still running the team, I think their signing would be Jackie Bradley Jr. You know, a nice, cute pickup, great defensive outfielder, but that doesn't quite do it. But if they can only pick one player, I think Trevor Bauer's the guy. Trevor Bauer also, his personality, Steve Cohen might get a kick out of because he's going to make the Mets a little more relevant as far as PR goes in the newspapers. People are going to like interviewing him. Trevor Bauer's going to say outrageous things. And Steve Cohen, in a way, doesn't seem to mind that. I mean, this is a guy who wants to have a Barbie Bonilla day now, okay, as well. So he has that sense of humor. And you put Bauer next to Jacob deGrom. I was mentioning, Cole and Bauer. deGrom and Bauer gives you the great, 1-2 punch. And the Met pitching is a little susceptible, as well as the Yankees. People talk about Marcus Stroman. I'm not sold on him at all. I mean, every team needs pitching when it comes down to starting pitching. But if you put Bauer next to deGrom, as I said, the catcher position, I hate to say you could always fill it up. There are always good field no-hit catchers out there somewhere. Maybe they're hanging around the minor leagues who can call a decent game and prevent passed balls, keep runners in check, throw them out, etc. And they're going to wind up hitting 202. That's the problem, okay? You're not going to get really good hitting catches. But Real Muto, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but I kind of give that little edge to Trevor Bauer. Some people are thinking George Springer because you could move him around the different positions in the outfield. He's a good hit, a steady influence. He's a winner. So I think the Mets are signing, two players. I have a feeling Springer's going to be one of them. But if they can only sign one, I say go with the big arm, put next to deGrom, and you have a power rotation if you do that.
So what do you think, Doc? What do you think, Doc? Who would be
All
your-
right.
Doc doesn't care about the Mets, so he's got to kind of rev it up, think in his head now.
All right. So if I'm the Mets, I don't disagree. I think either New York team signing Trevor Bauer obviously improves their starting rotation. But if I'm the Mets and I'm trying to say there's a new sheriff in town and Steve Cohen is going to change the landscape, the deal that I make is the one that would hurt the Yankees the most while bringing in a great player. And it's kind of funny, Jack, because we're flip-flopping on these two. If I'm the Mets, I bring in DJ LeMahieu. And all of a sudden, wow, the Yankee fans would be outraged. How could you lose DJ to the Mets? The Mets would be saying, we are here, we are real, and we are going after it. They need a second baseman, obviously, with Robbie Cano being suspended. It just seems like a no-brainer for the Mets and Steve Cohen to say, guess what, Yankees? The days of the old Mets are over, and we are here, and we are going to compete against you for everybody.
Don't you miss George Steinbrenner? Could you imagine Steinbrenner was still running things and the Mets signed DJ LeMahieu? In the next few days, Steinbrenner would sign both Romuto and Trevor Bauer. He would come back with both of them, lay out crazy money. Then the Mets would counter with George Springer. It would go back and forth, gobbling up the free agents. It would be fun.
It would be fun. Let's hope we see something like that because this would make New York sports very exciting.
Definitely.
It's a business too. And Steve Cohen, he has unlimited money, it seems. But at the end of the day, he's a businessman. He might think, okay, this first year, I'm willing to blow $1 billion out of my $14 billion. But that's as far as I'll go. $1 billion will go a long way. Signing players, this and that, because he's incurring a lot of debt. I heard he feels he's losing $400 million this year, and that's before free agent signings. But if a guy's a lifelong Met fan, I mean, like Mac, picture Doc. Let's say Doc had $14 billion and he owned the Yankees.
Right.
I mean, how much would you be with Doc? I could see you willing to lose a couple of billion, figuring you still just to keep, your favorite project, your team up there.
Well, listen, if I had the billions to spend, I'd keep LeMahieu and I'd get Francisco Lindor and I'd get Trevor Bauer. If anyone wants to send a couple of billion this way and let me run the Yankees, I guarantee you we'd win a few championships.
Can you imagine an owner was crazy enough to think, look, I'm going to stretch it down to $1 billion. I can live like a king on $1 billion. I got $13 billion. And can you imagine an owner signing all the top free agents, LeMayo, Lindor, Romano, Bauer, giving them crazy contracts that the guys can't turn down? I mean, the league would step in, I think. I think the league would then initiate a new rule, no more than 2 free agents per team.
They probably would. A lot of the rules that have come out over the years were made with the intention of chopping the Yankees down in different ways, even going back to the amateur draft and the luxury tax and all of that. But yeah, I think we like to imagine and say things like, if I own the Yankees and I had unlimited money to spend, well, of course. And the beautiful thing about the Mets with Steve Cohen, I believe he made a quote along the lines of, I'm not running the Mets to make money. I already have another job. I'm a big fan and I want the Mets to win.
Yeah.
And any team who has an owner who's saying that, I think that's just exciting and fun. And it's what any of us would do, is if we had that kind of money and we were fans owning a Major League Baseball team. That's what we'd want to do. We'd want to bring in all the best.
But you both got to remember, free agency and signing free agents doesn't always equal into wins, guys. I mean, there's only one position that you can fill per team, and there's unlimited players for each position. So you can go out and spend all the money you like we picked up Stanton's contract, and you can do all that. That doesn't mean it's going to work out and it's going to equal to wins. You'll be competitive, but that doesn't mean you're going to win the World Series. So I mean, there's got to be a lot of thought. I don't care who the owner is, into what players you're picking up and why. If they're just doing that to kind of mess with the Yankees, it's the wrong reason. They're not even in the Yankees division. So I would imagine that Cohen's going to make a couple moves this year, but I don't think he's going to go crazy and try to get an all-star team right off the rip. I think he's got to build that farm system. I mean, that's very important for you to win, as far as future players and trades coming up. So I mean, there's a lot to do there to make the Mets, a World Series contender again. It's not just going to be about the money, guys.
Mac, the Mets have good personnel as is, and they're going to have to address a situation. I think Michael Conforto becomes a free agent next year. So you're talking about a big contract there.
Yeah, you got to take care of your players you have presently too. And again, I mean, the Dodgers, they didn't have too easy a time winning this year. They were early favorites, and so were the Yankees, and the Yankees didn't even make it to the World Series. So, it doesn't always equal that way as far as free agency signings go. So, Doc, before we let you go, we want to get a bunch of information from you. We want to talk about your blog, Start Spreading the News, your book, anything else you got coming up in the future. And first, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and let us know about Start Spreading the News first.
Oh, again, you're very kind, and I like that you give us this opportunity, this opportunity to talk about the blog. Obviously, it's a Yankees blog, but we talk a lot about baseball, and we run articles throughout the day, every day, a minimum of 4 different posts. We have a staff of 12 writers who are all phenomenal. And we write because we love baseball, and we write because we love the Yankees. And I think our perspective is well-reasoned. We write well. It's original. Most of what we put out there is stuff that's different, at least in some ways, than what other people are saying. And we don't all speak from one voice. So you'll see different times where one of our writers might say, you have to bring back DJ LeMahieu. And another writer another day will put up a post and say, no, I don't think we want to bring back LeMahieu. We also do some fun things. We put up videos on Sunday night and Wednesday night. We put up a baseball card trivia every day at noon during the week. We have an interview series on Thursdays that runs at 10 a.m. where we interview all sorts of people in the world of sports. And yeah, I think it's a great blog. We got a lot of visitors. We got a lot of positive feedback, and when something we're all very proud of.
Excellent, Doc. Excellent. And tell us about again. We're gonna go ahead and plug that great book, Scattering the Ashes. If you haven't got it yet, folks, check it out. It's every major books I would say every major book outlet, right, Doc, right now?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And it won an award from the prestigious New Mexico, Arizona Book Awards. It won for 2020 the best book of literary fiction, which pleases me greatly. And it's just a wonderful story of a young man who really has to find himself as he fulfills his father's last wishes of spreading his ashes in places that had been meaningful to his father over the course of their life together. And it's a spiritual book. It's a book of love. It's a book of happiness. It's a book of setting goals and trying to achieve them. He runs the New York City Marathon as part of the story. I think it's just a great story. And I think a lot of people will love it. It's getting great reviews, and I couldn't be happier or prouder.
And we've talked off here before, Doc, about a possible things coming up there. You working on anything else in the near future here that we can check out?
Yes, I have a book of motivational stories that's coming out. I don't have a date on that, but I also have a book that's coming out on October 1st called The Least Among Them. And that's the story of the players in Yankees history whose whole major league career was of but one game. And I think that's an inspiring and original tale. No one has told the story of these players, and to make it compelling as well, because again, they only played one game in the major leagues with the Yankees. I then tie each of their stories into a bigger story that resonates more with the general Yankees audience, and tell a lot of different Yankee stories. A lot of original research I put into the book, and that's coming out on October 1st. It's called The Least Among Them. That's
great, Doc. Again, Dr. Paul Semmendinger, thank you very much for coming in. We lovingly call him the Doc. He's great with Yankees. He's great with baseball. You're very, very great guest that comes on every Saturday. Good luck, Doc, and have a great day and enjoy the weekend.
All right, you two guys, happy Thanksgiving, happy weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for all the kindness and support always. Appreciate it.
No
Thanks.
problem.
Take care.
Thank you for that, too. Have a great day. So there you go. Dr. Paul Semmendinger, again, doing a great job for us, Jack. Very knowledgeable in Yankees.
Absolutely.
Baseball overall. I mean, the man is like a walking encyclopedia. He's so knowledgeable, and I imagine that blog keeps his memory refreshed all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how the free agent market plays out.
It definitely will. And I mean, I think all three of us had some pretty good ideas on where the Yankees and Mets should go. I mean, it's going to be very interesting with the new owner at the Mets. And, of course, it's going to put pressure on the Yankees too, Jack. I mean, if you think about it, the Yankees, they're not in the same division as the Mets, but they are, they're looking for that publicity. I guess you would say they are competing publicity for them,
Well, it's going to be an interesting question is, who's under more pressure to make a splash this offseason, the Yankees or the Mets?
Definitely agree.
And you could argue that the Yankees are, because the Yankees haven't been to the World Series since 2009. I know they've been to the playoffs a bunch of times, but they haven't been back to the World Series. And the Yankee fans are getting a little antsy. I don't think the Yankees can sit still and watch the Mets be busy in the offseason and them not doing anything, from their end.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of different with our expectations as Yankee fans compared to a lot of teams out there. They're happy to get in the playoffs. We're not happy unless we're in the World Series. So it's a totally different mindset too, Jack.
And Steve Cohn also, he's got to make a splash. What do they say? You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
100%.
This is it. The Met fans are all excited. Nothing but goodwill towards Steve Cohn. And if he doesn't do anything substantial this offseason, Met fans won't be happy. He's got to get at least one major pickup, be it Realmuto, Trevor Bauer, DJ LeMayo, and then a secondary free agent at least, like if he got LeMayo and Jackie Bradley, that would be acceptable. Of course, get Realmuto and Bauer. Met fans will be salivating.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jack, we're going to take our first break of today. We'll be back on the other side for those that are viewing us in about 3 minutes. Join us back, and we're back to the Mac and Jack debate show. And we got coming up there, who do we think will have the best future which rookie quarterback will have the best future in the NFL. That'll be coming up next, folks. Come on and join us back, please.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211-INFO-LINE. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this?
Some children drink alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, for more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here. Huh? Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're on every Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. We're here covering your local Northeast professional sports and national news. Today is our debate and update special where me and the great Jack Hirsch, we debate some of the hottest topics in sports history and sports for that matter. So we try to debate almost anything that we can. We debate before the show, after the show, and during the show. So we just had Dr. Paul Semmendinger on, a great Yankee knowledge. He has a lot of knowledge about the Yankees, running the Start Spreading the News blog over there. He's also knows a lot about baseball in general, Jack. It's always a pleasure having him. Yeah. So we have the pleasure of having him on every Saturday. He tries to come in with us. So we're going to go get back to the debate here in a second. I want everybody to remind everybody we got a new sponsor, BST Sports Cards and Breaks. Go over to the Mac and Jack website. Check out their link at Max Sports Insiders, and go ahead and click and go and see what they got. They got some great stuff over there. If you use Mac and Jack code at checkout, you get an extra $10 off. So go ahead and check that out, folks. Again, just click on their link, and it'll bring you right to their store. It's a great store, and it's great for Christmas, birthdays, and just if you're a collector, with like I really was way back when, Jack. I don't know about you, but man, I used to collect cards all the time.
Oh, I still have cards. I mean, it's great. I mean, so many memories. You get the stats on the back and the great picture in front. It's a great thing. Baseball cards, you could trade them, keep them, whatever. It's nice. You could play GM with them. You could have 3 cards, but someone else has 1 card you want, and you could maneuver, make deals. It's a ton of fun having these cards.
Yeah, back then, Jack, we got a free stick of gum with our cards, right?
I hated that gum, but they used to have coins that came with it. I don't know whether you recall, for a couple of years. And
no, I didn't
No, you would sometimes flip the coins. We would flip the cards, whether it would be kind of like heads, tails, and we bet. And we kind of bet the cards. I didn't bet much because I remember a friend of mine got cleaned out. He lost his cards to someone else.
I didn't know it was gambling.
I was never big. Yeah.
I didn't know that was associated back then. I know they used
kids, yeah.
Yeah, I know they used to be in tobacco packs. Those are the real old cards, the ones that were mainly paintings instead of pictures. Yeah. And some of those are worth a lot of money today, Jack. So, I mean, they're great artwork, too. I mean, they're unbelievable.
And especially we pick up a pack, even like today, even adults, you want to get certain players on there. You get your pack, let's say even myself now, if I got a pack, and forget the Yankees, forget the Mets. I would love to get a Mike Trout card. I'd be looking, wow, Mike Trout. That would get me all hopped up.
One day I'm going to share my collection with the viewers and listeners. I got a rookie Barry Bonds. I've got the steroid team when they were all rookies. I mean, I got a lot of cards that one day I'm going to pull out, and especially if you like, the Eagles, the Patriots, the Bills, the Jets, the Giants. I got all their cards.
Listen, I got a card I mailed to the Yankees, asking this player to autograph it. The card was sent back autographed. Now, I don't know whether it was a legitimate autograph. I hope it was Mickey Mantle.
Wow.
But then you read Jim Bouton's football form, which he said the clubhouse man signed. So
yeah, that could be.
I don't know whether I have a legitimate Mickey Mantle signature, but it looks like it.
Yeah.
It really looks like his signature. So if it was the clubhouse guy, he couldn't imitate it that closely.
I mean, you should try to get that authenticated, Jack. I mean, if you got that authenticated, that'd be worth a pretty penny. And I don't even know if you want to sell
Mantle.
Yeah, I don't even know if you'd want to sell that or not. But I mean, I know, and this is not even exaggerating a little bit, Jack. When I was in the service, this one guy had such a collection, he financed the down payment with his card collection. Isn't that something else?
Well, it was just something on the news in which a guy had this baseball card collection going back from the turn of last century, and the money was so substantial he left it, to his grandchildren and all. And let's put it this way, they'd be able to buy a pretty nice house with what they were left.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of different angles to that. So folks, go over to BST Breaks Analyst.com. Check it out. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you'll get a rookie basketball player, baseball player, football player, whatever cards they have there. I know they specialize in basketball. That may turn out to be one of the greatest of all time, and you may have something there. So we're gonna get back to our debate, Jack. And this is an interesting one, especially what developed over last week. We're going to go with the rookie quarterback class and who we think has the best future. And you go first on this one, Jack.
Okay, last year, the number one overall pick in the draft was a quarterback, Joe Burrow. The next quarterback to go, who went number 5 overall in the draft, Tua Tagovailoa. And the next quarterback to go, the third one, went 6th overall, Justin Herbert. And you're right what you said. Joe Burrow suffering a bad injury last week maybe altered my thought process. I don't think so. I would have stuck to the same guy regardless. Joe, I think all three are going to have Hall of Fame careers.
Yeah.
So I can't talk negatively about anyone by saying, well, so-and-so isn't all he's made out to be, because all of them are all they're made out to be. I think Joe Burrow will come back from the injury, have an outstanding career. But now you have that little bit of a question mark. What happens if he suffers another similar injury? Can he come all the way back? You have to assume he does. If he needs any inspiration, look at Alex Smith at age 36. He should be retired, hypothetically.
Sure.
But here he is, came back to the Redskins and is playing outstanding right now. Maybe he's going to lead them to the NFC East title. So Joe Burrow was very appealing. He had a lousy offensive line he had to play with all year long. Unfortunately, he suffered a terrible injury. Maybe he'll be back before the start of next season. Maybe he'll be back well into next season. It depends how he recovers. So if you say Joe Burrow, he's going to overcome the injury, I can't argue, but the fact is he has had a pretty bad injury, which puts a little bit of a shadow over how great he's going to be when he comes back. Is he going to be 90% of himself? And if he is, that's still going to have a great career.
Sure.
There's Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, 2 problems involved. I know he's having a sensational rookie year. He's proved he's the quarterback of the future. But keep in mind, he's playing for a dysfunctional franchise, as is Joe Burrow. Those franchises, the Chargers and the Bengals, they just don't get it right. They just make blunders. Listen, the Chargers, their team doctor even messed up Tyrod Taylor by giving him the wrong shot. Imagine that. And listen, the Chargers had a great quarterback before, in Phillip Rivers. And it didn't have much of an effect because the franchise was dysfunctional. So Archie Manning knew what he was talking about when he steered Eli away from them, because he could kind of tell there was something off with the franchise. And he knew from experience over his career with the New Orleans Saints. Then there's Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, Tua has the best arm of the 3. Shotgun arm, so on. The worry about him would be, is he going to be injury prone throughout his career? And I don't think we could use that fact as too much of a concern in rating a guy, because we didn't have those concerns about Joe Burrow, and he's the guy who suffered a bad injury. Tua is with the most stable franchise of all in the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, unlike the Cincinnati Bengals, with Zach? I'm having a brain cramp. The Bengal coach obviously is having problems there. There's been a losing culture. He's not going to last. Anthony Lynn of the Chargers. He just doesn't get it right, Anthony Lynn. I mean, he recently fired a special teams coach. You know who he likes. He tries to make this move, that move. He would have relegated Justin Herbert to the bench for a couple of years and held up his progress if Tyrod Taylor hadn't had that unfortunate incident. And then there's Brian Flores, a great young coach for the Dolphins. Knows what he's doing. He's on task. Tua comes from a great program with Nick Saban. Nick Saban had so much faith in Tua, he sat down Jalen Hurts, who'd won him a national championship, and replaced him with Tua. That should tell you all you need to know about Tua. And Tua would have went first overall in the draft if there wasn't all those concerns, those injury concerns with him. And those concerns seem to have diminished somewhat with his arm, with his talent, with considering he's with the most stable franchise of all, and with a great young coach in Brian Flores. When all is said and done, I think Tua is going to have the most successful career of the three. Maybe not be the greatest quarterback, but a la Tom Brady, who might not be the greatest quarterback of all time, nevertheless has had the most successful career of all time out of all quarterbacks. And I think Tua repeats that out of the three.
Well, Jack, I don't know. And you brought up Burrows being injured, and that's true. And Burrows has been playing for a rookie, very good on a bad team. And then you say Tua, who got pulled out last week because he had a bad game and was replaced by Ryan Fitzpatrick, a journeyman. Listen, Tua has an accurate arm. As far as the cannon for an arm, I think Burrows and Herbert can throw as far as Tua can throw. He's very accurate. We found out that his escapability in the NFL doesn't look as good as it was in college because now you're playing with pros. Is Tua going to be a good quarterback? Yes. Is he going to be a great quarterback? Possibly. Burrow's getting injured. I don't think will affect him 2 years from now, but it might affect him next year. Again, as you said, Cincinnati, they seem never to get it right. If you're going to pick anyone, Jack, I don't know how you can't go with Justin Herbert. I mean, people are even saying that Miami might have picked the wrong guy. And there's a few reasons why, Jack. He's a natural. He reminds me of a lot of a taller Brett Favre. Unlike Tua, Herbert was forced to start because of what happened to Tyrod Taylor when the guy gave him a shot and then ended up hitting his lungs or something. I forget what exactly happened, but he put him out for the year. So Herbert gets jumped in there. He has an impact right away. He has a big arm. He's athletic, and he's a playmaker. He has a feeling for the game. And how his completion rate is almost 68%, Jack. Almost on the track. If he stays what he's doing right now, we'll have 4,500 yards and 36 touchdowns with only 10 interceptions if the projection stays the same. Now, I mean, he has come in and made the Chargers formidable right off the rip. I mean, this guy is making plays that an experienced quarterback makes, and he's playing. He didn't have time to sit back and wait half a season. Tua was supposed to be getting ready to play. They were bringing him along slowly, and they pull him out after his second, third game. So he falls apart. The pressure gets to him, and his escapability, as I said, in the pros doesn't look as good as it was in college. And you got to take in account, Jack, his injury, that hip injury, where you pivot and you throw from your hips. We don't know. We still don't know whether he's going to be able to carry on or not. Listen, if you want to talk a quarterback that if you watch play, that if you see what he does right in his first year, running with the ball, throwing the ball, making the right reads already, you have to go with Herbert. I mean, not only does that potential, he's already proving it on the field. Big upset already for him this one year.
Well, I got to point out when the Chargers played the Dolphins, okay, Tua outplayed Herbert.
And that might be
this game this year. And Herbert hasn't finished off games. The Chargers are 3-7 on the year.
They might be, Jack.
3-7, and you keep pointing to one game where Tua, who's a relatively, new quarterback, he hasn't played the whole year like Herbert, who's done a heck of a job, by the way. They take him out for Fitzpatrick because they're contending for playoff position. They don't have the novelty to let Tua gain more experience on the job with the game on the line. The Dolphins are now trying to make the playoffs.
Well, Jack,
guy. Everyone knows Tua is going to keep starting all the games from now on in. But when you have a capable vet like Fitzpatrick, who could rally the team in a big situation from time to time, of course you're going to put him in for a rookie. There's nothing mad with that. They can't do that with Herbert.
Of course, nothing, Jack. I mean, when Tom Brady first came in, he had Steve Grogan behind him who went to a Super Bowl and almost won the Super Bowl, and they stuck with Tom Brady when he had his problems. Listen, to have faith in the quarterback, to show faith that this quarterback is going to be one of the best, you're saying it may be a Hall of Fame career, which I don't agree with that, and all three of them. They've got to prove that to me. But if you're going to say that Tua is going to be a Hall of Famer and he has a one bad game and you're going to pull him out, that shows to me you have no faith in him. So I don't care if Miami's in last or they're in first. This is who you said was going to be your starting quarterback. You pulled out Fitzpatrick and placed a Tua. Then why put Tua in to begin with, Jack?
And Brian Flores said very firmly, Tua's going to be starting next week. He's the starter. There's no hemming and hawing there. Anthony Lynn was going to start Tyrod Taylor this year. Tyrod Taylor, very average quarterback who really should be no more than a backup. And he said if Tyrod Taylor has a good year, he's going to start next year as well. So if you left it up to Anthony Lynn, Justin Herbert would probably still be on the bench.
Yeah, but that
wouldn't have gotten in for the game.
That's not what happened, Jack. That's not what happened. Herbert got called in. He got called in by surprise. I mean, he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, as you say. So they didn't take him and coddle him for half the season. They said you got to go do it. And guess what? Justin Herbert has done it. He's held up his end. Now the Chargers may not be as good a team as Miami. I'll agree with that. But again, he's come in, he's played really – in fact, he's outplayed Russell Wilson's rookie year right now. He's outplaying Russell Wilson as he did in his rookie year. This guy has a feel for the game. Before the season started, Jack, when they were going to go ahead and they were going to draft an order, everybody said Justin Herbert throws too many interceptions. Justin Herbert doesn't read the defense as well. Justin Herbert can't – are you kidding me? This man is playing – just as good as Burrows was, and he's outplaying Tua for the year right now. And Tua already got pulled once, Jack.
Mac, didn't you say you love to quote Bill Parcells' lines when it benefits you? It doesn't benefit you in this spot. You are what your record says you are. I think it was like 3-1 on the year.
3-1, Jack? Are you sure about that? Is he 3-1?
They lost to Denver. Yes, since he replaced Fitzpatrick, that was their first loss to Denver.
Right. And they won 3 games before that with Tua, Jack. Are you sure about that?
Right. When he came in, they won those games. They beat the Rams. Okay,
right.
They beat the Rams with Tua as a starter.
Yeah,
they won the games regardless. Justin Herbert, the Chargers are 3-7.
We know.
Now, Justin Herbert is terrific. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a potential Hall of Famer, as is Burrow, as is Tua. All great young quarterbacks.
We know all football people that follow football know that the quarterback does not win the games by himself. That Miami defense is ferocious. They have a great special teams. They are in a better place right now than the Chargers. But right now, Jack, at this point in time, Herbert is a lot better positioned than Tua is. Tua got pulled, Jack. They said, you can't lead this team, Jack. They said, we want to go to the journeyman, Ryan Fitzpatrick. We're going to put him in because you can't handle the pressure and you can't handle this game. They can't pull Justin Herbert, Jack. They got to go with Justin Herbert.
Let me tell you what Tua is going to have that the other two, Burrow and Herbert, aren't going to have over his career. He's going to have stability. He's going to be with Brian Flores for his career because Brian Flores is going to be the Dolphin coach for a lot of years, one of the great young coaches in the league. As for the Bengals and Chargers, they might be playing musical chairs with coaches. Both their coaches on the hot seat right now. So chances are both Burrow and Herbert are going to have to keep dealing with new coaches. And Tua's going to have that Tom Brady type stability that he had with Belichick for his career. That's what Tua's going to have with Brian Flores.
Well, since we're just supposing here, because this is all speculation we're talking right now, is what's going to happen in the future. Let's just say Brian Flores does have 2 good years, Jack, and some other team scoops him up. Say the Dolphins don't make it to the Super Bowl. He comes up on a contract. Another team wants him. They grab Flores. Okay, and so what happens to Tua then, Jack? So then,
Mac, come on, give me a break. I mean,
Well,
Lawrence is going to be with Miami. He's going to be set with them. Coaches don't play the free agent game like ball players. Going to the next bidder. The teams work it out with the coach when they want him, and the coach stays. That happens practically every time.
And since Herbert was thrown into the fire and he's come out the other end, it wouldn't really matter to me if they got another coach, Jack, because Herbert is a natural.
Herbert is outstanding.
Right.
But out of the three, who's ultimately going to have the best career? And I say Tua, because he's going to be with the best team at the end of the day. The Dolphins are going to be more successful than the Bengals and the Chargers in the long run.
Again, speculation, Jack. Suppose the Bengals get a great offensive coach or a great head coach.
You're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals here, Mac. Yeah, suppose. Yeah.
I mean, anything can happen. We're saying.
Right. Now let's throw Sam Darnold in the mix. Suppose the Jets get this great new young coach or whatever. So.
Right. I mean, anything can happen. That's what you're speculating right now. I'm saying right at this point in their career. Right now, Herbert is the better quarterback than Tua. He hasn't got pulled yet, Jack.
That's not the answer. Who's going to have the best career in the long run? That's the question.
And from what I watch, and I've watched all three quarterbacks, Burrow is exciting. He does a lot with nothing. Tua is very accurate, and he is. But when it comes to the natural, Jack, when it comes to a guy that reminds me a lot of Brett Favre, he's a playmaker. He makes plays with his feet. He scrambles around. He reads defenses in his first year, Jack. This guy's got unlimited potential. And I think he'll far outdo Tua and maybe even Burrows. I don't know.
I'll tell you, Mac, I'm glad someone isn't digging up the old tape of you and I arguing many years ago where I was saying Dan Marino would be better than Ken O'Brien and you talking me down.
Hey, Ken O'Brien.
Why the Jets made the right pick?
Ken O'Brien head-to-head, Jack. Ken O'Brien had good games against those Dolphins. And again, wins and losses is really not a quarterback record. It's more of a team record because there's a lot of teams that won a lot of games with not the best quarterback and a lot of teams that lost a lot of games with great quarterbacks. So great debate, Jack. That was a good one. And I think all three will have good careers. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah.
So next, Jack, in our next debate, we're going up with the best point guard in local history. This was rough for me. I even thought about Jason Kidd, but he's not in our local area because he's mainly played for Jersey. He had that one season with the Knicks where he played really well.
Well, he led the Nets to the finals for 2 years in a row.
Right, but we're not talking New Jersey, so
New York, New Jersey Nets could count.
It could have, but
wait. We're talking New York, Philadelphia, Boston.
Right. So New Jersey, I couldn't put Jason Kidd in for that.
The New Jersey Nets count. Since when are they irrelevant, man?
Well, they're not irrelevant. At the Brooklyn Nets, we would talk about them as far as the.
Oh, come on! They're part New Jersey's part. New Jersey's closer to New York than Philadelphia, Boston, Mac.
I agree.
You know the geography.
I agree with that. I'm just saying.
On, Mac. You're disqualified. So let's disqualify the New York Jets and New York Giants from all discussions because they play their games in Jersey. Come on.
Yeah, but they're still considered New York teams, Jack. And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying I was going to pick Jason Kidd, but I went with a New York player, a New York point guard. So I went with Walt Frazier, NBA champion from 1970 to 1973, 7-time NBA All-Star MVP, 7-time defensive first team, Jack. October 30th, 1969, he had 43 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. He was in the, of course, 1970 final. When Willis Reed went out with that bad injury, he ended up coming back in later. It was a very, I guess, painful leg injury he had. But with Willis Reed out, Frazier had one of the greatest games in NBA history. He had 36 points, 7 rebounds, and 19 assists, Jack. And in 1973, they go up against the highly rated, highly powered, big star team, the Los Angeles Lakers, and they take them in 5 games, Jack. And his defense on Jerry West was unbelievable, and he helped the Knicks very much by shutting down Jerry West for the most part, as best you can shut down Jerry West anyway, the great scorer he was. So, they beat the Lakers, who were the big favorite in that game. A lot of that has to do with Walt Frazier. Of course, he teamed up with Earl of Pearl Monroe. A lot of people thought they couldn't play together on the same team. It worked out real well, and they ended up having great teams there. 15,581 points. He averaged 4.8 rebounds a game, assists 5 a game. Not probably the greatest if you want to put him up against some of the greats, Jack, but for the New York Knicks, definitely the greatest point guard of all time.
I mean, Walt Frazier, one of the most charismatic athletes in New York sports history. Clyde, he was the epitome of cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that seventh game against the Lakers. Willis Reed, ironically, was the MVP of that series. It should have gone to Walt Frazier. That's a debate for another time. Walt Frazier, great defensive player, so on. But we're talking about point guard.
Yeah.
Technically, Frazier was a point guard, but the idea of a point guard is to spread the wealth, okay? Run the offense, make it better. Frazier did that to a large degree. Don't get me wrong, but he was a combination of a point guard, a shooting guard, a great defender. The greatest pure point guard in local history. And we'll eliminate Jason Kidd because he really didn't have a long enough career here, even if we were going to count the New Jersey Nets, who he did a phenomenal job for as a point guard. Would have to be Bob Cousy. I know I'm going back to another era, so on, and I don't want to hear the talk, well, the players today are better than they were back then. They are. I'm not doubting it, but Bob Cousy was ahead of his time. As a pure dribbler, I could argue he's the greatest dribbler in the history of basketball. Now, when you think of Bob Cousy, think of a better version of John Stockton, which says a lot. I mean, Bob Cousy had a 14-year career, all but a few games with the Celtics from 1950 through 1963. I don't count the few games he played in for the Cincinnati Royals when he was their coach and came back as a player for a couple of games or so. For 8 straight years, Bob Cousy led the league in assists. And the reason the number's not higher, I mean, they didn't really keep assist records were different then because you didn't have the 24-second clock during that time. So more of the clock will run out, which means less chances of bulking up your numbers for assists. But he led the league for 8 straight years. He was a 6-time NBA champion, including titles, I believe, before Bill Russell joined the Celtics. He was the MVP of the league in 1957. He was a 13-time All-Star, meaning he was an All-Star, I think, 13 out of the 14 years of his career. And in the All-Star game, he won the MVP of the All-Star game 2 times. And his scoring was comparable to Frazier's. He averaged 18.5 points a game. Frazier averaged over 19. And like I said, with the assist factor, the numbers would have been much greater. As it was pretty good. He was just a master at moving the ball around the court, Bob Cousy. When I was in school as a kid, Bob Cousy was iconic. Even though Bob Cousy had been retired, we would be taught in class the Bob Cousy 2-hand set shot. Now, that went out of style.
Yeah.
Today you try a 2-hand set shot, they're going to block it unless you're completely wide open.
Right.
Players take jump shots at the league. But Bob Cousy mastered the fundamentals. It was amazing. You see players doing things on talent today. Bob Cousy was great on the fundamentals. He's the guy who ran the show.
Yeah.
And if we expand it outside of the local area, the only 2 point guards I think you could really put ahead of him would maybe be the big O Oscar Robertson, who would maybe be number 1, and then maybe Magic Johnson. But I would put Bob Cousy right there with those guys, even though he might be a little step behind. He's right there with them. Phenomenal player. He would be dribbling the ball all over the court, setting up the great Celtic offense. And he was the guy who made it go. He was the conductor of those Celtic teams.
Definitely great pick, Jack. The only thing I'll disagree with you is that saying the basketball players are better today than they were back then. When you compare errors like that, you're going to talk about, you mentioned the 24-second clock. You can mention the 3-point line that's been added. You can mention the fouls that they call today that they didn't call back then. It was a much more physical game, a much more a dynamic game where, you could hand check a guard all the way up the court and wouldn't get a foul call for it. Today, if you breathe on them wrong, you might get a foul call. Charging was a lot more called back then. You would take that foul on more than it's called now. To say they're better, you could make an argument for that. I'm not 100% agreed with that. I think Bob Cousy is an outstanding pick. The only thing I liked about Frazier a little bit more than Cousy was his shooting ability. The Celtic teams back then were awesome, Jack. I mean, they had awesome teams. They dominated. And the Knicks always seemed to be the underdog in every championship they were. And I think if it wasn't for Walt Frazier, they wouldn't have won either of those championships, Jack, that they won.
I mean, that's a fair statement. I mean, Clyde was great. He was stylish. He was a master on defense, stealing the ball away. And, great player. How can you go wrong with Walt Clyde Frazier? But the image he had, too. I mean, like I said in the beginning, he was the epitome of cool on and off the court. Walt Clyde Frazier. And, just a legendary New York player. And I enjoy him as a broadcast on the MSG
He's very good.
Network,
He's
talking
very
about
cool.
the games, having good insights. You mentioned a point, well, the modern players aren't necessarily bad. I mean a little more talented. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had, I think, a 20-year-plus career. Yeah. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, around 1990, was asked who was the toughest guys he played against. And he went back to Wes Unseld a couple of decades before, which should tell you an awful lot that he was digging into when he first came up, how tough those guys were.
Well, if you look at all sports, Jack, I mean, you could even talk baseball, how much, they had the metal cleats and they would go in hard and, running over the catcher. And I mean, they took the All-Star game seriously. I mean, you look at Mike Trout and he's an old time player, but could he be played as effective back then? I mean, it was a rougher sport. And every sport, football, baseball, basketball, it was more physical. And to me, it was a little bit more enjoyable than it is today because, a lot of points is great, but sometimes that gets boring too, Jack.
Well, yes. I mean, listen, you have to have rules to protect players, like with the bad boy Pistons, the way they hit guys coming to the basket. I mean, a basketball player goes up in the air for a layup. He's exposed.
Sure.
He could really get hurt if he's upended the wrong way. And one of David Stern, the former NBA commissioner, the late David Stern, one of his big regrets was he allowed too much of the ref stuff to go on during his time as commissioner. He wished they had clamped down early on it.
Yeah. And I can see that, Jack. It almost became a street fight in basketball sometimes. I mean, and as you say, they're not padded up. But baseball was just as tough, Jack. I mean, you as a catcher or a shortstop or second baseman, your legs were exposed, and you could get knocked out playing catcher, especially those guys running full speed at you. It took a real different type of person to play catcher in baseball.
Well, Pete Rose running into Ray Forsey in the All-Star game. Forsey didn't even have the ball.
Yeah.
But he's blocking the line. I mean, Pete Rose could have went around him, but Pete Rose just ran into him, and he hurt Ray Forsey's shoulder in the All-Star game, and Ray Forsey was never the same player again because of that injury.
Yeah. I mean, it was just all sports really were tougher way back when. You go back to the 30s all the way through up the 80s. I think, in my opinion, that's why what Michael Jordan did back then is a lot more impressive than what LeBron James does now. I mean, LeBron looks like a bigger person, but with Michael Jordan and how physical it was back then to do what he did, to me, is very incredible. So, Jack, we're going to go ahead and take our second break, our last break for today. We'll be back on the other side, guys. We're going to be talking about the best local safety in history and local history. That's, all New York, Boston, and Philly. We also got a segment of who or what's better. I love that segment with Jack, where we ask him who's better, in history compared to today, history and history, today and today, and what things are better. And we give him a choice, and it's always great answers. So we're going to come right back on the other side here. Guys, stick with us, and we'll be right back.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org. If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can you come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer me a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Well, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 through 10 a.m. I'm your host, Mac, with my co-host, Jack, and we're here discussing our not only the Yankees early this morning with Dr. Paul Semmendinger, our guest this morning, but we're also going over our debate show, which we do every Saturday for you folks. So make it an appointment to come see us and hear what we got to say on who we think is the best in the category we select. And it's a lot of fun. Jack has a lot of knowledge in a lot of areas, so I like to get into it with him, and it's a lot of fun. So, Jack, we got our last debate coming up, and then we're going to go to who's better, and then we'll do a little sports updates, events and history for the folks out there. So we got up next is the best safety of the local football teams in their history. New York, Boston, and Philly. And I guess it's my turn to go first. And I picked Brian Dawkins of the Philadelphia Eagles. This guy was awesome. He was a nine-time Pro Bowl participant. He had 1,147 tackles, 26 sacks, 36 fumbles forced, 19 recoveries, 37 interceptions. He was part of the Super Bowl team when they did beat the Patriots. Of course, he was in the front office. He was nicknamed Weapon X, used as a leader of the Eagles defense. He did serve, as I said, as executive football of players operations from 2016 to 2018. So he did stay with the Eagles even after he retired. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Going back to where he first started at the Combine, Jack, John Wooten, the director of scouting for the Eagles, said he just took over the Combine like he was the captain of defensive backs at the workout. He was one of the most feared safeties in the game, Jack. He was aggressive, a hard hitter. He read the passing formations, quarterbacks unlike anyone else in the game during that time in his time in football and during that time in football history. I remember the Giants playing against him. They were always getting hit by him. He was an incredible safety, Jack, one of the best in history. He's my pick, best safety in local history.
Brian Dawkins was outstanding. The problem sometimes with these debates is comparing different eras, okay? Yeah. And my selection came from an era well before Brian Dawkins played, decades before. But all I can do if I'm comparing era to era, who had a bigger impact during his era, and the guy I'm picking is Emlen Tunnell. Now, if you don't know who Emlen Tunnell is, he was the first African-American football player for the New York Football Giants. And if they pick a good one, he came to the Giants in 1948, actually 1 year after Jackie Robinson came to the Brooklyn Dodgers. But unlike the fanfare, the well-deserved fanfare that Jackie Robinson had gotten, and as well as history has treated Jackie Robinson, Emlen Tunnell is a forgotten man. Now, he had a 14-year career. The first 11 were with the New York Giants, and the last 3 were with the Green Bay Packers under Vince Lombardi. And the reason he went to the Packers, not because the Giants wanted to get rid of him, because Lombardi had been the Tunnelin's defensive coach with the Giants, and he wanted Emlen Tunnell badly to become a Green Bay Packer. And Lombardi was rewarded. And Tunnelin's last year with the Packers was Lombardi's first NFL championship. And Emlyn Tunnell had one early in 1956 with the Giants. So he was a two-time Super Bowl champion as a player, not in the front office, like you mentioned. Brian Dawkins part of the team, which was in the front office. And Emlyn Tunnell was a 9-time Pro Bowler, like Brian Dawkins. He was on the NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team, and he made it right to the Hall of Fame, his first chance of eligibility as well. Interceptions, he had 79 compared to 37 for Brian Dawkins over their career. He returned punts, did it really well, and Emlyn Tunnell held a number of NFL records. When he retired, eventually they'd be broken because decades passed. But Emlyn Tunnell had an Ironman streak as a safety. He played in 158 consecutive games. That's a lot of games. When they'd have a 14-game schedule, think of that. That is over 11 years straight of not missing a game. Over 11 years straight of not missing a game and playing at the top level. One of the New York Football Giant magazines, they kind of had a poll of the greatest Giant players of all time. It wasn't taken that long ago. Number one heading the list was LT as the greatest Giant player of all time. No one's going to argue about that. But number two was Emlyn Tunnell as the second greatest Giant player of all time. It's hard. Brian Dawkins came in a different era. I'm sure if Brian Dawkins been playing for the Giants, he would be a legendary Giant player. He would have done a phenomenal job, as he did for the Eagles and as he did for the Denver Broncos the last 3 years of his career. But if you look at everything Emlyn Tunnell did over his career, I mean, he's the best safety in local history as far as I'm concerned.
It's a great pick, Jack. It's a great pick because a lot of people, as you said, don't talk about Tunnell. I know of him. I know how great he was. I just thought that the impact, you talk about Tunnell with some great teams. The Giants at that time with defensive coordinator Tom Landry was not only a great defensive coach, but he was an innovator. And then you talk about him going on the Lombardi team. Again, as you mentioned too, I think that if Brian Dawkins was on the Green Bay Packers or the New York Giants, his career would have at least equaled Tunnell. I know that Brian Dawkins played on a lot of competitive teams, but they weren't the caliber that the Giants were that time or the Packers were. And I still think that overall, if I had to pick a safety that enforced the run as much as he did the pass and took over the in fact, you're talking about a leader of the team. And when Tunnell played, you had different leaders on defense beside him. And that's why I picked Brian Dawkins, not to take anything away from Tunnell.
Well, what I didn't mention, Tunnell was, upon retiring, he came back to the Giants in 1965, and for 10 years, he was their defensive backfield coach.
Yeah.
For 10 years. Now, had the times been a bit kinder, he would have been a prime candidate to have been a head coach, but unfortunately, during that era, for obvious reasons, that opportunity, unfortunately and unjustly, was shut off to him.
Agree with that too, Jack. It's like I said, it's a hell of a pick. I mean, if it wasn't for for Brian Dawkins, and I watched him play, so that's maybe even an unfair thing.
Right, Brian Dawkins was terrific.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, could the Eagles use him right now? They need some leadership in the worst way. Someone could step up and rally the team, and no one would have been better than Brian Dawkins.
100% right.
Now,
100% right. And so what we're going to move to next, Jack, is one of my favorite segments. We're going to say this is brought to you by Z Catering, the small to big parties, whether weddings of hundreds of people or smaller parties like birthdays, anniversaries, or graduations. Z Catering will take care of you. They have 5 restaurants with top-line chefs preparing your food. Their food truck is perfect for your brewery or busy club when you need food to be open. The truck is a little restaurant on wheels with a big variety of choices. Check out Z Catering on the Mac and Jack sports.com website called Mac Sports Insiders. And so what we're going to get to next, Jack, is who's better. And I'm going to expand that to not only who's better, but what's better, because I had some interesting thoughts that went through my head sometime last night about 1 a.m. about certain situations that I want to get your opinion on. So first we're going to do a who's better question, and this has to do as an announcer, a color commentator. Who's better at color commentating, Troy Aikman or Tony Romo?
Who's better? Who do I prefer?
Who's better, my friend?
I'm going to say Troy Aikman. He breaks the game down better. He gives you situations a lot better. But I enjoy Tony Romo more. Tony Romo's like going with a friend to the ball game and hanging out in the stands and having a great time. Tony Romo's so much fun to listen to. Troy Aikman's more about business. But from a strictly football hardcore thing, you got to give an edge to Aikman, even though Romo's more fun to me to listen to.
I agree with that, Jack. So what's better, Jack? Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football?
Monday Night Football, because we still have the hangover, the Sunday games. We're still psyched. We're still talking about what happened. And then for them to go at it Monday night. Mac, you might mention Tuesday Night Football now, because with the Ravens and the Steelers getting rescheduled, Tuesday Night Football might be the best of it. By then we might get tired of football.
Yeah. No, Jack.
But I like Monday Night Football a little more because there's a hangover, but a good hangover, wanting us to get a little more. If you get the right game, if you get the Lions and the Bears playing Monday night, I could do without that.
Of course, I used to love Monday Night Football, Jack, way back when it was the first football show, if you want to call it that, because they added so many cameras in the stadium so you could get more angles. Of course, you had a colorful crew that was, announcing it with Howard Cosell, Danny Don, and
Gifford, Meredith, and Cosell.
That's right. And but I think I've changed. I really enjoy Thursday Night Football now. It seems that Monday night isn't as entertaining as it was, and Thursday Night Football to me right now, having football all in one game and getting it over with. Sometimes I find myself.
Mac, you know what I like more? I kind of like Sunday Night Football. I think they present it in a nice way. I enjoy Tony Dungy's analysis, and
that's a good point.
What's happened with Rodney Harrison there? He used to team up with Tony Dungy a lot. Now they brought in Chris Sims.
I don't know.
I like Rodney Harrison. He was pretty good, had good insights. He worked well with Tony Dungy. Chris Sims does a good job. It's no knock on him.
Yeah. I just don't know. Maybe because Thursday night is getting close to Sunday and they have big games. The NFL Network used to hog that, and they found out they weren't getting any ratings, so they gave it to Fox and CBS also. I don't know. It may be a toss-up to me. Here's one for you, Jack, and I already know what your response is going to be to this because of your former experience. But if you were going to go watch something, what's better, Jack, boxing or MMA?
I mean, I'm not into MMA. That's not fair to MMA fans to ask me that question because I'm not an MMA fan. I'm not putting it down at all. I just never took to MMA since it started. I did love Bruce Lee.
Okay.
I went to all the Kung Fu movies. I watched some tournaments and all. So I appreciate the martial arts. I was a big wrestling fan for a lot of years. And, it's a funny thing. At a boxing event, I got on an elevator and I was introduced to this guy. And the guy got in my face in a nice way, like to look me in the eye in a humorous way. I didn't recognize him. And then he was helping me set up for the banquet that night with boxes in the back, and I was hanging out with him. And I didn't know till later on. His name was J.B. Bradshaw, JBL, I heard. He was a former WWE champion.
Right.
And I had fallen out of touch with wrestling at the time, so I apologized to him.
It reminds me, Jack, that, when I watch MMA, and I do watch some MMA, and of course, I love boxing. Boxing seems to be, to me, a harder sport in that you can't grab the guy and throw him on the ground. The way you score points is, of course, by trading punches and of course, the defense and all that. MMA, Yeah, MMA seems like almost like a barroom brawl to me, where anything goes pretty much. It has tamed down a little bit over the recent years of trying to protect the fighters a little bit more, but they're both entertaining.
A quick comment, Mac. Last night's fight, I stood up to watch the show on the Zone.
Right.
Danny Jacobs won a split decision over Gabe Rosado. We talked about it with Iceman Scully beforehand. Danny Jacobs, very disappointing. Barely got by, basically won on talent.
Yeah.
And against the guy who is no more than a gatekeeper. So it doesn't bode well for Danny Jacobs, who's a local guy here from Brooklyn. It doesn't bode well for him going forward.
A great point, Jack, bringing that up. I had that on my updates. I didn't get to it. Yeah, I mean, and when I asked mainly Iceman about Danny Jacobs, they said a lot of articles I wrote that he takes the easier fights and doesn't go higher than he should for his talent. And just outpointing that guy kind of
barely. I had it scored a draw. Two
Yeah.
judges had it the equivalent of 7-5 for Jacobs, 7-5 for Rosado.
Right. So yeah, very, very great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Jack, what's better, hockey or soccer?
I mean, listen, you got to go with soccer because soccer is the most wide world sport there is. We tend to think of things too much when we're United States. And hockey is big worldwide too now. Don't misunderstand me at all. Hockey is biggest in Canada. It's caught on in the United States, but it's not close to being a top 3 sport. It's not close to being in the level of baseball, football, or basketball in the USA. It has its hardcore groups who sell out the arenas. And it's bigger. Hockey's bigger than soccer in the United States, but worldwide, soccer is like the ultimate sport for many.
Yeah, but I mean, which is better to you, Jack? You saying soccer?
To me personally, I would go with hockey because you have a little more scoring in hockey. Like you mentioned, Mac, those 1-0, 2-1 games. If it's an exception to the rule, great.
Right.
But if that's the constant rule that we're getting all the time, if a team jumps off to a 2-0 lead, they can sit on that lead all game. All they have to do is lay back, keep clearing the ball, not let the offense penetrate. In hockey, it's different. A team could jump off to a 2-0 lead. You can't sit on that lead.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't just lay back and let the other team attack you and keep clearing the puck out because that wouldn't work.
I definitely agree. And I think hockey has a lot more action than soccer, Jack, and a lot more physicality, of course. And, nobody's falling down with fake kicks.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mac. What is a better sport to watch in person? Okay, would you say basketball or hockey? Just as a spectator, relaxing and having an enjoyable night out.
I've been to both, and I'll tell you right now, Jack, live hockey, there's nothing like it. There is nothing
live
like
hockey. It's great. Live hockey is great. The pace up and down the ice. Great spectator sport.
Definitely. Okay, Jack, gymnastics or ice skating? To me, not really both sports, but they are competitions. What would you rather watch? A good
ice skating. I love the times during the Olympics, the jumps they're making. The commentators are telling us the double, the triple axels, the whole thing. I wouldn't know for the life of me how to judge an ice skating event. One of my daughters had also taken ice skating. I take a nice liking to the sport, especially I like the women's ice skating events like a great. And gymnastics, gymnastics is terrific, as well. My own personal preference is figure skating.
Last question that has nothing to do with sports, Jack. Who's better, Frank Sinatra or Elvis Presley?
I like Old Blue Eyes.
I knew you would.
Listen, Elvis was charismatic. Elvis was great. Elvis would throw out that hip. But Sinatra kept it going. Even when Sinatra's voice was gone, people loved him.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone loved Sinatra. And so on. Sinatra was the photographer for the first Ali Frazier fight. He'd attend all the fights.
Yeah.
He paid for Joe Louis's funeral. He was close to a lot of the fighters.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was a different.
I go with Sinatra.
It was a different kind of fan
No
base.
disrespect to Elvis, but
Yeah.
Sinatra was the guy.
There you go. Well, two legends, and I'd go with either one. Elvis would kind of outdo Sinatra for me.
Sinatra was a friend of Tommy Lasorda's.
Yes.
So what he would do, Tommy Lasorda would take Sinatra to meet his mother, and Sinatra would sing to his mother.
And the Rat Pack was unbelievable, Jack.
The Rat Pack. I like Joey Bishop when he had that show on ABC.
Right.
I mean, young people aren't going to understand what television was at the time. You only had a handful of channels, channel 2, 4, 5, 7. And that night, late night, 11:30, you'd have the Johnny Carson show, the Joey on NBC, the Joey Bishop show. He was part of the Rat Pack on ABC. And on CBS, you'd have the $1 Million Movie. Can you imagine that? Only one movie on TV. Now you have 84 movies you put on cable. At that time, one lousy movie to choose from. Take it or leave it.
That's right. Either do it or go to bed.
Young
Whatever.
people are spoiled today, man.
Yes,
I'm kind of spoiled too. I channel scan too. Yeah.
In fact, more time scanning than watching the movie sometimes. So we got on this day in sports, we got some events for you, Jack. 1906, Canadian Tommy Burns retains his heavyweight world championship after being pushed 20 rounds to a draw by Philadelphia Jack O'Brien in Los Angeles.
Tommy Burns was an underrated fighter. He's mostly remembered for losing the heavyweight title to Jack Johnson in Sydney, Australia in 1908. Johnson chased him throughout the world. Tommy Burns was a little guy. He was about 5'7".
Yeah.
Yet Tommy Burns made 8 defenses of the title. Very underrated fighter. When Jim Jeffries retired unbeaten, they tried to have a mini tournament to decide Jim Jeffries' successor. So Jim Jeffries anointed a fighter named Marvin Hart as his successor. Well, Burns would then beat Hart, and then Burns took control of the division for a while. But Jack Johnson was a little too big and a little too good for Tommy Burns. But Tommy Burns, very underrated fighter.
I mean, just imagine boxing for 20 rounds, Jack. That's got to be exhausting. I mean, come on. That's crazy.
I mean, John L. Sullivan and Jay Kilran went 89 rounds. I mean, you know what it was with the old timers, Mac? They didn't have the full technique of today, so they would wrestle a lot in clinches.
Yeah.
So a lot of rounds would go by. They'd be wrestling in close. And also the guys of that time, their mindset, they were mentally tougher than the guys today. I mean, they were tough men who would endure an awful lot.
Yeah, I agree with them. They went through a lot too, Jack, in their personal lives, a lot more than we go through today. So they had to be tough. 1925 NHL goalie Jorge Vencina collapses and dies 4 months later of TB. People don't realize some of the diseases out there. We talk about the COVID. There were some diseases out there that were killers, Jack, and the great goalie there.
Thankfully, modern medicine and all, could deal with things like that a lot better now.
In 1929, Chicago fullback Ernie Nevers sets an NFL record for most points scored in a single game, with all 40 in the Cardinals' 40-6 rout over the Chicago Bears. Nevers has NFL records, 6 touchdowns and 4 extra points, Jack.
No, don't tell me, but someone else was MVP of that game.
Oh my goodness! No one else was MVP of that game, Jack. So in 1938, the 4th Heisman Trophy Award. The people don't realize that the Heisman Trophy Award goes back that far. Davey O'Brien, the quarterback for Texas Christian, won that award, Jack. So the Heisman Trophy.
The Heisman Trophy doesn't necessarily translate into success in the NFL ranks. I mean, I'm sure if we went down a list one day of all the Heisman Trophy winners, and we had to give them a grade whether they were successful or not. We'd see a lot of them really weren't successful.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't drafted that high because
That's very
they're
true.
not really great prospects, even though they've had great college careers.
Yeah, and a lot of it, to me, they should start calling the best quarterback in the country award, because there's a lot of players at different positions that don't have a chance at getting that Heisman Trophy award.
Yeah.
To me, they should change that award name. Walter O'Malley fires Bert Schotten as Dodgers manager in 1950, Jack. And in 1953, the 18th Iron Bowl, they're playing that tonight too, Jack. The Iron Bowl will be on tonight. Alabama versus Auburn. Alabama beats Auburn 10-7. That is one of the greatest rivalries of all time that a lot of people up here in the Northeast don't talk about, Jack. I mean, incredible.
Well, in that part of the country, I mean, that's all people are talking about.
Definitely, it's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Let me get to a couple other ones. I don't know if you remember Warren Spahn, Jack, of the Braves. He wins the Cy Young Award back in 1950.
Oh, I never heard of him, Mac. Who, Warren Spahn? Was he good?
He won the Cy Young Award. I guess he was pretty good.
Yeah. One of the all-time greats, Warren Spahn.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we love to have him on the Yankees, Mets, whatever. Talk about a guy giving you innings. He broke the rule. He would pitch deep into games, ton of complete games. And to my knowledge, his arm never gave out on him. That he never got hit badly. To my knowledge, yeah.
I think you're right. 1965 draft. Tucker Frederickson was drafted from the Auburn University.
Good running back.
Yeah, he got injured. He was the first round draft pick for the Giants, and included in that draft, which is still talked about, was Gale Sears, Jack. So,
but there's no way of telling how it came back. I believe in any draft, just judge how your own guy did. If your own guy has been very good, if he's shown he's worthy of a first round draft choice, you can't judge. I heard the other day someone saying, well, the Jets could have had Patrick Mahomes. Well, they took Jamal Adams that year as their safety. Jamal Adams was a great pick at the time, and he's an outstanding NFL player today. Never mind, circumstances had the Jets trade him, but I don't want to hear, well, the Jets could have gotten Mahomes, because who knows how it's sometimes going to turn out.
Definitely agree with that. We talked about this man earlier, Jack. 1974, Bowie Kuhn.
Bowie Kuhn.
Thank you very much. Suspends George Steinbrenner for 2 years, Jack.
Bowie didn't like George. It was personal, too. Bowie was a bit snobbish in that regard. I mean, if you recall, with the pine tar incident with George Brett, when George Brett had too much pine tar and hit the home run and the umpires called him out.
Yeah.
Bowie Kuhn, Bowie Kuhn's going to would have said it was Lee McPhail, who was the American League president. They overturned it and they allowed the home run. And their argument was Lee McPhail, under Bowie Kuhn's direction, said, well, it's the spirit of the rule. Either you broke the darn rule or not. I don't want to hear the spirit of the rule or whatever. If an umpire gives me if a police officer gives me a ticket because I jaywalked, I don't want to hear, well, it's the spirit of the rule. If no cars are coming, it's okay. I walk in the street when it's red, even though the ticket would be petty. In that circumstance, it's either rule or not.
Yeah, that's rules are made to be broken, Jack. In 1975, the great Bobby Orr plays his last game for the Boston Bruins, which unbelievable hockey player. We covered him in one of our debate shows. 1978, Reds fire manager Sparky Anderson after 9 years. Jack. Great manager.
Well, Sparky would hook up and become manager of the Detroit Tigers not long after, and would have one more championship in 1984 with that great Tiger team. That Tiger team led from wire to wire.
Yeah.
Okay, winning the World Series.
Great manager in the history of baseball, in my opinion, anyway. So, Jack, we're coming to the end of the show right now. Tomorrow, folks, we have our big football show. We have two great guests. Anthony Servino, he's our fantasy football guy. He'll be giving you his best plays as far as fantasy goes, and he helps us break down big 3 games of that Sunday. And we also have Robert Butler, who is the host. Yeah, a host of Sports Scope. And he's a very great guest that we have, comes on and talks about a lot of opinions. You guys have a great Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, 8 to 10 a.m. on the Mac and Jack Sports Show and our football pregame show. Please join us, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, folks.